Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Career.Place Introduction webinar. My name is Gabe Gurman, and I'm joined today by Melissa Dobbins. We are the co-founders of Career.Place. And just so you're aware, this webinar is being recorded. Everyone's line is muted. If you have any questions along the way, please do ask them. Open up the chat box you can get on the Join Me panel, and you can address them to the user called Career.Place. And at the end of the demo, we'll be looking for questions, and we'll be able to answer them at that point. So we figured a great way to start this month's introduction webinar is to tell you our origin story. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Melissa.
So we all know every great story has a great beginning. That initial spark that explains the why, the motivation that became the hero, the organization, the saga. So our story starts in the shower, with a common lament that so many job seekers have. This really sucks. Specifically, it was my job search. The company that I was with had just successfully exited, and it was becoming time to find my next adventure. And I was frustrated. I was frustrated about the questions I was being asked. And I'm sure it was because I was a woman. Questions such as going into the detail of what I thought was work-life balance, where I know they were checking to make sure I wasn't going to leave the office every time my kid had the sniffles. And questions about my capabilities and things like, can I fire people? Because, you know, that's really hard. I was also frustrated about the questions I was not being asked. Questions relevant to my skills, my approach, the way I think, how I handle situations. There has got to be a better way. And so as I stood there, I forced myself to stop. And I reminded myself of a rule I always try to live by. Accept what it is or take steps to fix it. But do not complain, because complaining doesn't get us anywhere. And so sparked an idea, a better way. So, as I do with all my crazy ideas, I turned to Gabe Gurman. Because not only is Gabe an expert in what it takes to build a technology with an incredible knack for seeing the commercial value of technical solutions, he's also brutally honest while being the nicest person you will ever come across when he has to tell you your idea is bad. So I'd often walk away from conversations with Gabe thinking, wow, I'm amazing. My idea sucks, but I'm really great. So naturally, I turned to Gabe and I gave him a call to tell him my idea.
So I got the phone call from Melissa that day, and I heard the idea. And I'm usually pretty good at poking holes at ideas. But during the initial call, I couldn't poke any holes. I took a couple days to think about it, and I spoke to a couple people who also, you know, they heard the idea and they couldn't poke holes at it. So I decided to call Melissa back. And I asked her some questions, and I called her the next day and asked her more questions. And pretty much every day for a couple of weeks, I ended up calling Melissa with more and more questions until I started generating more and more ideas. And then at one point, Melissa decides to ask me, well, you know what? Are you interested in starting a company? And I said, well, I need to think about it. And it took about maybe 3 or 4 seconds, and I came up with an answer, and the answer was yes. And from there, we decided to start Career.Place. Fast forward about a year from that point, and we've developed a product that now Melissa will walk you through an introduction. And after the introduction, we'll go right into the demo of the product.
So here's where we began. We began with the mission to end bias in hiring and introduce a better way. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Look at these pictures. Pick out the one you think is the teacher. Have you picked one? By the way, if you picked up someone who you think doesn't actually look like the teacher, that's actually also bias. Here's the thing. Bias is not a bad thing. It's part of being human. In fact, it's those shortcuts that keep us alive. We would not have survived if we had to stand around thinking, do I play? Do I run? What should I do in this situation? Unfortunately, when we apply our biases to people, it can lead us astray. And that can lead to making bad hiring decisions which results in costly bad hires. Bias is simply bad for business. But we all know this. We all know bias is bad for business. We've all seen those countless articles and blog posts and news scandals and reports all showing the negative impact of bias in hiring. The question is, how do we stop it? So let's come back to these pictures. To remove bias, we must remove what triggers our bias, identity. Because now, can you tell me which one's the teacher? Without the biases to give us shortcuts, we're forced to use other techniques to find candidates. So, whereas before, we started with the resume and all that wonderful biasing information within it, where the candidates are known and commonly evaluated by talking through their history, such as, walk me through your resume, tell me what you did at whatever company. And it was always done in an inconsistent way. I mean, think about it. The last time you hired someone, did you ask every person the same questions in the same order in the same way? Probably not. So what we've done is we've started with the job and defining what it takes to be successful for the position. Then we can anonymously evaluate candidates against those requirements in a way that allows them to showcase what they're capable of in a consistent, fair process that asks every candidate the same question in the same way. The Career.Place solution is an evaluation funnel. It systematically and objectively identifies highly qualified candidates. And it does it through a multiple-step process. So the first step is the basic qualifications. For example, can the candidates lift 50 pounds or work on weekends or travel 30% of the time, or do they know Java? The basics to do the job. For those that meet those basic qualifications, they have the opportunity to show what they're capable of through the demonstrate stage. For example, if you're hiring an accountant, you can give the candidate a spreadsheet and ask what their taxes are in Texas versus New York. Or if you're hiring a services representative, how are they going to handle a situation with an angry customer? Or for an engineer, you could ask them to design a widget or debug a program. And for those that demonstrate the type of work that is aligned with what you're looking for, now they can show if they're a good fit for your team and a good culture add for your company. And vice versa, if your company and your team is going to work for them. At the end of this process, it results in highly qualified candidates that have objectively met all your criteria. And now you can reveal who they are. So when you're selecting who to hire, you know you're selecting from objectively qualified candidates and not just taking those dangerous bias-enabled shortcuts that can lead to the expensive mistakes. And that is Career.Place. Gabe?
Great, thank you, Melissa. It helps if I unmute my phone. I'm going to take back control over here, and I'm going to actually doing the demo. And before I do the demo, I do want to mention that Melissa is going to be dropping off and heading over to Houston, a short little 4-hour ride away from her. She's got a speaking opportunity at Disrupt HR Houston. So if anyone's in the area of Houston, I'm sure you can go there tonight. There's probably still availability. So at this point, I hope you all can see my screen. What you're actually looking at right now is the Career.Place dashboard. And what I have over here is a demo system, and this is what I'm representing over here is a recruiting company that specializes in placing candidates into universities. And what you see over here are the list of jobs that I have active, whether they're posted, which means they're out in the job boards and actively seeking candidates, or they could be in draft mode like we have below, or I'm not ready to exactly post it yet. And the thing you'll notice with each job is we have a lot of information, a lot of data to share for each position that's being hired for. So we have over here, for example, this is called our stats Spark. And you can actually take your mouse and hover over it. This is representative of the funnel that you saw in Melissa's slides. You can see from one quick view over here how many applicants have applied, how many have passed the qualification stage, that first part of the funnel, and so forth. If I click in here, you're going to see details on the statistics. So you could see at a high level how well your job is working in terms of candidates, how many are viewing versus how many are applying. You could see in terms of that first phase, the qualification phase of the funnel, you could see why candidates are dropping out. And in this case over here, I could see that 8 candidates have dropped out due to not having the right skills, 2 dropped out to not passing the knowledge quiz, and 1 dropped out because they didn't meet one of the basic requirements. And one thing I can do over here is scroll down and see more details. Like, for example, this job had a list of skills that were required, hard skills. And I can see this one particular skill over here, 5 candidates didn't meet that basic qualification for this job. So they were rejected from this job. Now, as the owner of the job, I can go back here and say, well, you know what? This is a skill that we could probably teach as part of the onboarding for a candidate who's got the basic skills. So I could go back to this job, edit it, remove this skill, and automatically these 5 candidates will be notified, and they'll be we'll tell them, hey, the qualifications of the job has changed. Would you like to reapply? And we'll allow them back in. If I scroll further down in the stats page, I can also see the stats on the later stages. Those are the next 2 stages in the funnel that demonstrate in the interview stage. And I can see basic information of how candidates are flowing through here, how many are passing and not passing each of those stages. Let me scroll back up over here and now show you an example of the homework stage and how we review homework. So you see, the first thing you want to point out over here is I happen to be a recruiter in this job for a financial analyst, and it clearly indicates that there's action required on my part. You'll see in the top part over here, these are the candidates that are requiring review. These are candidates who submitted their homework assignments or scenario assignments for this job. And the one thing to really point out is that, and just to make sure, as Melissa mentioned, every applicant is anonymous. This is the most information you will see about an applicant as they go through our funnel. So I can click on review over here, and I can look at this particular candidate's work. In this job, we had 1 homework or scenario question, a demonstrate question. This is the question on top over here. It involved an attachment. In the blue, you see an explanation for the people reviewing the responses from the candidates. It's guidelines from the person who created the question on what to look for in the answer. Scrolling further down, you could see the answer from the candidate. And on the right side over here, there is you could see the commentary and the review ratings by the people responsible for this job. Now, a job doesn't only have a hiring manager. There could be a recruiter as well. And you may invite a handful of subject matter experts to help you review the responses from the candidates. So you can collaborate on reviewing the responses, and you'll have an audit trail of this information. I, as a reviewer of this, or in this case, I'm the recruiter of this job, I can rate this as well, or just leave it as applicable, because maybe I don't know some of the details over here. And then we can make a decision to progress this candidate to the next step, or say, nope, they really don't have what it takes. In both cases, we'll notify the candidate of the disposition of where they stand. Similar kind of interface on the interview stage. This is that last part of the funnel. So these are the candidates who submitted those video interview responses to the questions in video. So again, I can review the information. The same team can review it. They can collaborate on the responses. They can rate the responses. And for the ones who are past this step, they end up in what's called the Reveal tab over here for the job. And this is the point where you're allowed to unlock the candidate. At this point, they've shown they have the foundation and meet the basic requirements of the job. You see you've reviewed their homework and their responses were satisfactory for the job. You've seen the interview responses as well. So they've got all the components, all the building blocks really required to perform the job. So at this point, as a hiring manager or the recruiter, you can unlock them and see all their information. If their resume is there, you'll be able to review their resume. At that point, you'll be able to chat with the candidate, invite them in for an interview, and then make your final decision about a hire decision or not for each candidate. So that is the general overview. The one other thing I wanted to show you very quickly is that for that same job, financial analyst, if you decide to use your own career page, and I click on view posting over here, you'll get a view of what the candidate will see when they are about to apply for the job. So this is what our job posting looks like. Very clear indication of the job itself, where it is. We do have the option to include videos. So let's say you have a culture statement, or maybe the hiring manager made a good video recording describing the job, which is becoming very popular today. Those will be included over here. All the basic information about the job, the summary, benefits, why is this job different, and why, from a candidate perspective, why would you want to work here, culture statement, and then a quick map in terms of the location of the job to show where it is. And candidates would simply click apply, and they could apply to the job. So that's the demo I wanted to share with you today of Career.Place. Joining this month's webinar, as I said, mentioned earlier, we will have another webinar next month. We'll send invitations out for that as well. And like I mentioned, we're going to talk about adverse impact reports, EEOC type reporting. So with that, everyone, thank you very much and have a pleasant rest of the day. Take care.